Welcome to Section 7, Monitoring and Backup. In this section, we're going to take a look at monitoring with the Server Manager, searching through our event logs, using the Task Manager to view and close running tasks, evaluating system performance, configuring the Windows Server backup, and then restoring from that same backup. So let's move ahead into monitoring with Server Manager. I am back on Lab Server 1, and we'll go ahead and click on Start and select the Server Manager. Now our Server Manager is loading, and you can see here we have our local server tab and then all of the features that we've installed on this server since we've walked through the course. So ADDS for Active Directory Domain Services, the DHCP server we turned up, and then DNS that was part of the Active Directory Domain Services. We also have file and storage services that were installed that we can use to create file shares. Now for this, we're going to stay in the dashboard initially. And as you can see here, I'm going to go ahead and hide this large welcome screen so we get a little more space to look here. And you can see that the servers have been divided up into groups. Mind you, we do only have a server of one in this scenario, but you can see that by default the Server Manager has grouped things by their service. So servers that have Active Directory role, DHCP, DNS, file and storage, and so forth are listed here. You can also see where an error has been logged, say down here in services on the local server and all servers. This will most likely be the same message, but you can see that the heading is turned red, and that should just catch your eye and tell you that you need to take some sort of action or review on that system. So you can see here when we go into the details that the maps broker is not working. We aren't very concerned with that right now, so we're just going to let that be, and let's go ahead and add another server. Now we took a look at this way back at the beginning of the course, but we'll get a little more in depth here. If you go over to Manage, you should see you have options here for adding servers and adding the server groups. So let's first add our server. You can see here that it's looking inside of Active Directory in the Packed Lab domain, which make things a little easier to find now that we have both Active Directory domain services and DNS up and running. So for this we can just type in lab server 02 and have it search. There it's found lab server 2, and you can highlight and then click on the right arrow here to add it into the selected column. So now we have our lab server 02 from the packedlab.local domain, and we'll click OK. Now if we drop down to all servers, we should see we have lab server 1 and we have lab server 2. So let's go back to dashboard quickly. Again, in the case of 2 servers, this isn't necessarily a huge deal. But let's say we've added 10 more servers that are on this network unrelated to our lab servers, and we want to just create the group for lab servers. We can then go in and go to Manage and create that server group. Just say lab servers for the name, and then you can see the pool of servers here, or again you can search through Active Directory or DNS. You also have an import option where you can give it a file and pull the servers that way. So we'll go ahead and just go to the pool since the things are already listed there, and we don't really need to be very specific since both of them are lab servers. So I'll highlight both and click on the right arrow again. You can see inside packedlab.local we now have server 1 and 02. And when we click OK, you can now see that we have a group for lab servers. And if we click on that group, you see we're taken down here into the lab servers group, and now we can just view only things related to those systems. So when you do add them, it does take a little bit of time before everything starts coming in, so we might not see a lot yet. You can always go to tasks and run a refresh, or you can hit the refresh at the top of the Server Manager to see what comes in there. Now another thing, on the events pane here, by default you're not going to see any of the informational pieces. You're going to see, well, let's take a look. You go to tasks and configure event data, and you'll see critical, error, and warning messages will come in from the last 24 hours from multiple logs. And you can click here if you want to get more specific. By default, it includes those base Windows logs for application, systems, security, and I believe the setup. And you can scroll through here. There's quite a bit of logging that you can pull in if you want to get a bit granular based on the role for that particular server. So we'll just turn on informational so we get a little bit more here. Click OK. There you can see, and this is just a pull of everything in those event logs. So you can click on any of them, you can read the description below and see what's going on that system without actually putting hands on. Now if you do run into issues, you have a couple of options. The first option here below, you have a services pane, and the services pane will show you what the services are on the system and what their current state are, and based on the state you can right click and take action on those services. So in this case we have power is running, the start type is automatic. We can select to stop, restart, or pause that service, and based on the status and the start type you may see some options grayed out, but that's one way. If you have a service that's down, you can easily restart it without having to connect to the box. You can also run a best practices analyzer below this. And what this is going to do is view what roles are on the box or what changes you've made, and then give you best practices based on what it thinks you're trying to do and what you need to do to make that more secured or performant. Below that, we also have performance. So we can right click on our server and we can start performance counters, and I'll just show you. Up here under tasks, you can configure those to see what the CPU and memory thresholds are and the display period for the graph. Now we're not really going to keep this running long enough to get any significant data here that we can take a look at, but you can see there's a way to put some basic performance data in the server manager, so again you're not spending time running around to each server trying to find that information. Under that, you also have options for roles and features, so we can see everything that's installed on that system. And we have the option here under tasks to actually target this particular server if we need to add or remove roles in that case. So all the way up at the top, we have one more set of administrative options that we can do from either tasks or right-clicking here on that particular remote server. You can see we have options to jump to that add and remove features. We can restart the server, which can be fun. Then we have some of the local options here. Computer management, where we had managed local users and groups earlier. You can start a remote desktop connection straight out of the server manager, a remote PowerShell connection. You can configure the NIC teaming, set a specific user to connect to that server in case you just want a particular person or service account to touch it from here. You can start that logging below the performance counters, and then you can also remove this server either from the group or from server manager entirely, all through the tasks or right-clicking on the server here. So that's the grand tour for Server Manager.